What's up guys, it's Mark here back with another video. In today's tutorial I'm going to cover basically the thing that I'm asked about more than anything really, which is about creating cool looking stamp-like textures on my work, which I do on both typography and on illustrations. The example I've got here is obviously type. Quick shameless self-promotion, this is using my new font by the way, which is available on Creative Market. It's called Forged, but anyway. So basically what we're going to talk about today is how I turn these types of textures into Photoshop brushes and then how I apply them to my work. Now, before I get stuck into how to actually make the brushes, I will very quickly go over sourcing textures and getting vector copies of textures and things like that. I've spoken about this at length in, I think, probably like 3 videos now and done a Skillshare class on this exact topic. So I won't spend ages talking about how you find textures and create them because I've done that. This is going to be more about how you actually get the texture into Photoshop, save it as a brush, what settings you can use and stuff like that, and then how you apply it to your work to create an effect like this, which kind of replicates like a vintage stamp look, you know, because like the edges are still quite thick, but then there's kind of like specks and stuff missing in the middle of the text and stuff like that. So now let's begin. So first things first, again, I'm going to be pretty quick when I talk about sourcing the textures and stuff, because like I said, I've kind of like done this so many times now that if you guys watch my videos, you're probably sick of hearing about it. Now, sourcing textures, I've said before that one of my favorite ways to do it is to rub like dirt or ink or roll ink, for example, onto a piece of paper, scan it into your computer and get a super high res image. If you don't have time for that, can't blame you. You probably want a quicker solution than that, which is totally fine. I would recommend going to a website called unsplash.com. It's full of images that are free for, you know, anything, literally anything. You can use them for anything you like, and then just go in there and search for texture. So I went in there and searched for texture. I found this cool image of like a gray concrete looking wall, I guess, whatever it is. As you can see, if I scroll through, there's heaps more textures here that you could use as well, which would be pretty cool. Just try to find a photo of something that's really front on, not at an angle. Then what you do is you grab this image, copy paste it into Adobe Illustrator. Then you use the image trace function. Again, cover this in plenty of other videos. You want to crank the path setting all the way up, corners down, noise pretty low, turn on ignore white. It's a good way to get rid of the background, saves you some time. And then the threshold here will determine how much of the black shows through. So if you want it to be really subtle, you drag that down. If you want it to be really grainy and like heaps of detail come through, you drag it up. I had it up pretty high to get this texture on the left here. So this is the final result of the texture on the left, once I've live traced it from that exact image I just showed you. And again, sorry if that's, I know that's really quick, but that's not really part of this video. This is more about Photoshop and applying the textures and making brushes and stuff. Anyway, so once you've got this vector texture, jump across to Photoshop and paste it in. I'll just hide this text real quick. You should have something that looks just like this. Cool, so this is that same texture that I just pasted in. Remember that the size of the document you're working on will impact the size of the brush itself. So I usually work at like 2000 by 2000 pixels when I'm making a brush like this, because it's pretty large in size and it's really easy to scale down a brush. But if I did this at a really small resolution and tried to scale it up, all those little dots would be massive on the screen. Like it just wouldn't be as good. You'll just have to trust me on that. So now that we've got it pasted in, it's transparent, so it's got no background, which is perfect for us. We're going to make a couple of small changes to this, right? So one thing that you'll notice is that if you're using a texture like this and you start applying it to, say, the background of an image, if the brush isn't big enough and you want to apply it across big parts of it, it's going to be really obvious, because there's going to be these really blunt like edges along the texture, and it's going to be just really obvious that you've copied and reproduced a texture. So what I like to do is I grab just a normal eraser brush. I'll just go up here and grab that, and what I do, it's just off the it's off the side of my screen at the moment, but basically I grab a default eraser and then I turn the hardness all the way down so it's really soft on the edges. And then what I do is with it at a fairly large size, I just subtly go around the edges of my image like this, and I just kind of smooth out some of those textures along the corners and stuff like that especially. And then when I come along and use this brush later on, if I use it beside itself, if that makes sense, in almost like in tiles, it won't be quite so obvious that it's been reproduced, and it will blend a bit more smoothly and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. Okay, so we've got our texture. This is looking pretty good. What we want to do now is go to Window and then open up Brush Settings and Brushes. So now that we've got this window open, this is where we'll do some tweaking once we've made the brush, by the way. You can see I've already made this a couple of times here for practice, but anyways, so what we're gonna do now is I'm going to select everything that's on this layer. So just go Command A, or Control A. I'm using a PC, don't know why I said Command. And then in the top left corner of the screen, you go to Edit, and then down to Define Brush Preset. Then you can call it whatever you want. I'm gonna call it YouTube Tutorial. And you now have a brush preset. So now if you've got your brushes window open here, on the left hand side, let me just hide this layer real quick and make a new one. So if you've got your brushes here, you can click it like I have and check it out. We now have our textured brush there. So I can click around and yeah, we have that texture. So you'll see if I just shrink this down a bit, you'll see what I mean. Even now, you'll still sort of be able to tell that there's you know, that it's been relayed, but the edge in between there is much smoother because we just gently erased the, you know, we just softened the edges quite literally. So that's all we had to do to that. Now it still looks a little bit too generic and a little bit too obvious for me, especially those sort of circular areas that are missing in the middle there from the pattern. So one thing I like to do is actually just go across to the brush settings tab. If this isn't open, you just go up the window, then down to brush settings. And what I like to do is just turn on the shape dynamics. I alter the size a little bit, the size jitter, and the angle jitter just a little bit. And then I also adjust the scatter just a little bit. And then what happens is when I actually apply it, you'll see that the brush can rotate a little bit and it becomes a bit less obvious. In fact, it's still not quite as much. So what I'm going to do is adjust the angle jitter a bit more as well. And you can see now that it's changed the angle that the brush is sitting at. And so that can just help to make things look a bit less predictable, basically. So now you can see it doesn't look too bad at all. Looks like a, yeah, good looking texture to me. Okay, cool. So that's how you make the actual brush. Then you can just click on the drop down and, you know, you can save it as a new brush preset. You can make a ton of different versions of it if you wanted to. Yeah, it's pretty much that simple. That's how I've done it. So the next part is how we actually add this to some text like I did for this one here. This is, again, this is not the only way you can do this, but this is just the way that I've always done it, and it's super quick and super easy. So what we need to do is get some text, first of all, that I haven't already textured. I'm gonna grab my little demo text again. Could have just typed that in Photoshop, but anyway, it doesn't matter. And then what I'm going to do is, with my new brush, which I've already got selected, I'm gonna change it to be white, and then whoops. Then I'm going to just control click on the type. You could, the layer that's got the type on it, sorry, so it selects the type. You could just use a clipping mask if you want, but basically this will just stop any texture from going on the background. Then what I do is just stamp it on wherever I want it, like that. Then I'll just deselect that, which is all good. And now, so this does look kind of cool, right? Like it is weathered and stuff like that. But one of the things to me is it still looks obvious. It still looks like it's type that's just had a texture slapped over the top of it, like it actually is. So what I like to do is, like you saw in the example here, I like to have it so that there's no texture around the very edges of the type. And even I do this with my line work as well in my illustrations. So the way that I do that is really simple. I double click on my layer and I just apply a stroke to it. And then all I do is set the position of the stroke to the inside and just make sure that the color is matched to the color of my type. And then when I do that, you can see if I toggle the stroke on and off, yeah, that's all there is to it. So I've been doing this on work for years and years and years. And yeah, there you go. And you can use blending options and stuff like that for when you change colors of the background and all that. But yeah, this was really just about showing you how to make the brushes and turn a cool texture like that into a brush that you can use. So I felt like that tutorial went really quick. I hope I just didn't rush that too much, but I realized that there's so many parts there that I've rambled so many times in live streams and stuff with you guys. So if any of that didn't make sense, let me know and I'll just make another video and reply to comments and things like that. But yeah, I hope you found that useful. And if you want to help me out, by all means, please feel free to give the video a like and subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram and all that cool stuff. And I will see you in the next video.